Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So, I just came back from my trip to Norway, and I'm saying this because whenever I go abroad, I am met with people having to pronounce my name. I have to introduce myself when I meet new people. And I have been living abroad with a Polish name for my entire life, and it's a thing that a lot of people ask me about, like, okay, how do I pronounce your name? And I know that for a lot of people, the correct pronunciation of their personal name is something that is very important to them because your name is part of who you are as a person. And if you're called a name that is not yours, either by people calling you the wrong name or people just pronouncing your name incorrectly, it might be difficult. So I thought I'd make a video about this because I am also trans, and if anyone knows how important being called the correct name is, it's probably a trans person, someone who has changed their name. Now, obviously, these issues that I want to speak about are absolutely not trans exclusive, and there are trans people who do not mind being called something else or use multiple names at once. So obviously this is not something for just trans people, it's for anyone who has a name that is used in contexts outside of their native language. So if this is your first time on my channel, hi, as I've said in the beginning, my name is David, which is basically just David, but written with a W, which is the Polish way of writing it, because I am from Poland. And I am trans, so the name David has not been with me my entire life. But before that, I also had a typically Polish name that was also pronounced either incorrectly or at least in ways that I didn't really like. So when I chose another traditionally Polish name for myself, I knew that it's probably going to be difficult for people to pronounce it or know how to pronounce it. And this resulted in me basically using different pronunciations of my name depending on the context. And I have heard statements from people living abroad saying like, you shouldn't have to make it easier for other people to call you something they want to call you. You should just like tell them what your name is and make sure that they will learn to pronounce it. But honestly, I have learned that my name is more of a term that describes me rather than this one word that has to be pronounced in one specific way. So, for example, here in the Netherlands where I live, I prefer being called David, which is the Dutch pronunciation of the name David, because when people try pronouncing my name as David, they say something like David, and I I don't vibe with that. I don't vibe with that, so I'd rather you just call me how you would pronounce my name rather than try to pronounce it and just end up with something that is just no. And for a long time I also used to think that I would not like being called David because it is quite different from David, but recently I have been hanging out with people from the United States, and I have noticed that I prefer them calling me David. Like, I still feel like they're talking to me when they say David. Like, I don't have to hear David in order to know that I am being called. But that's just my personal thing with my personal name. I know that there's multiple ways to look at this. So, for example, I don't think my name is that hard, and my last name is also not that hard. And I can imagine that, for example, growing up, going to school, and constantly either being called the wrong name because people can't pronounce your name, people asking you if they can call you something else because they just give up altogether, teachers who are not able to pronounce your name, so you know that when they're pausing and staring at their list, you know that it is your turn and you just say, yeah, I'm here. So I can definitely see how that might be difficult, especially if you really like your name. It must be very hard to hear people mispronouncing it, especially if you know how it is pronounced. Because I have also seen some people, when it comes to last names, for example, Americans with Polish last names, who like mispronounce their last names so badly, and they just don't know that that's not how it's pronounced because the pronunciation just changes after a while of living in the United States. So for me as a native Polish person, that's just weird, but for them, that is the correct pronunciation. So I guess it can also just change depending on where you live. And I guess it also has to do with your personal relationship with your name. You know, you can try to tell people that, oh, you can call me something else too, but if it's just not something you automatically respond to when someone calls you that, then, you know, what's the point? But then again, it's also very common to have a shortened version of your name or a nickname or something like that, and that doesn't necessarily have to be your own name or like even remotely close to your name, but you can still respond to it if you are comfortable being called that. And I think that because I'm trans, people find it difficult to call me something else other than my name because they wouldn't know how I would respond to that. Like, I chose this name, so obviously it would be a logical assumption to make that I want to be called this name and only this name. And honestly, I don't really care that much unless you're doing it for like the wrong reasons, unless you're like purposefully calling me something else because you do not want to use my chosen name, then you know, sure, call me whatever you want as long as you know that my real name is David. Then I'm good. But I also know people who are comfortable with a few names. And for people who have grown up with only one name being only called one thing, I know that that might seem weird. And I think that's also a trans thing because you choose a name for yourself and sometimes that name doesn't like fit 100%, so you just have to try out different names. And sometimes no one name fits perfectly, so you just keep two or three. And you know, why not? Unless you need it for some kind of specific documentation or some kind of official papers, then why not have two or three names? As long as people know who you're referring to when talked about in a conversation, then you should be good, right? I just had the luck of immediately finding a name that suited me. I chose my name before I knew I was trans. I just saw this name and I thought, damn, I wish I could be called that. And now I am, so yay. But yeah, over my whole life, I've just had people asking me like, okay, is it okay if I call you this? Is it pronounced this or this? What do you prefer? And I have come to the conclusion that I do not care. I would rather you call me a name that is closest to David, which is like the pronunciation of the name in your language. Like whether you want to call me David or David or David, like sure, call me whatever you want, I will respond to that. And I would rather you just do something that you're comfortable with rather than like try to appease me by doing something that I actually find horribly cringe. So if you here like know me in real life but haven't actually used my name in conversation to other people, so to speak, because I know there's some people who only know how I would pronounce my name based off of my YouTube because I introduce myself every time. So yeah, if you are not from Poland, then please refrain from calling me David. That's just how I pronounce my name, and that's how my name is pronounced in Poland, and probably also in other Slavic countries. So if this is the pronunciation of David that fits your language, then you're good. But if not, then just do whatever you feel comfortable with. And I know you might criticize me by saying like, oh, but why are you making it easier for other people? You should just, you know, stick with what you want. And this is what I want. I want people to call me what they feel comfortable calling me. And I'm not doing this to like appease them, I'm just doing it to appease myself too. I would rather them be happy with what they're calling me without having to struggle as much than like constantly trying to get it correctly while it's just not working. So I'm sorry if this video is gonna be like a bit weird or short or whatever, but I just came back from holidays and I'm going on holidays again in a few days, so I didn't have much time to do any research or something. But if this is your first video of me or not, then feel free to let me know what else you'd like to hear from me so that I can have some material prepared for the coming weeks, because I'm also starting university in like 2 weeks, so obviously I will have less time, but I will also be in academic environments again, so I will have more stimuli coming into my brain, so probably also more ideas on what to make videos about. So don't worry, you will hear from me. But for today, this is everything I had to say. It's basically just about my name and how I would like to be called and why. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.